Hello, this is the review for the midterm part 2 covering chapter 15 on job order costing. Again, hopefully you have the textbook in front of you, page 821, the decision toolkit exercise that we'll be going through in a minute, and the review for the midterm exam Word document that was posted to week 4 folder of the class. So again, I'm not going to belabor the important bullets here under chapter 15 on the Word document. You can see them for yourselves, accumulating costs versus assigning them, actual manufacturing overhead costs that are accumulated, and then the manufacturing overhead costs that are applied. The applied overhead is assigned based on a predetermined rate, and so forth. Difference between job order versus process costing. The flow of production costs from initial assignment to job orders and work in process inventories, finished goods, cost of goods sold, and understand product versus period costs, which we also covered, I think, somewhat in chapter 14. So, without any more ado, we'll get into this decision toolkit exercise as kind of an example of where we went with chapter 15. And you can see the solution to this on page 822. So again, I'm not going to lay out the whole thing here for you, but in looking at the questions that they were asking regarding why this company is using a job order cost system, well, the words you needed to latch onto in the problem as they describe the business that they're in is unique and custom made, because that is the situation where you would expect a job order cost system to be used versus a process cost system, which is one that is used for the manufacture of very similar products that are being done basically the same way over and over again. So the answer with A is that they're building a unique custom-made product every time. That lends itself to accounting for the job, not the process or department costs. Now we go on to B. On what basis does the company allocate its manufacturing overhead? And then compute the predetermined overhead rate for the year. Well, you're given that they apply the overhead based on direct labor cost. So the predetermined overhead rate, you simply need to look for the estimated overhead that they are giving you as 24 million, and the estimated direct labor costs, which they estimate as 20 million. And you simply divide by the 24 by the 20 and get an overhead rate of 120% of direct labor cost. Now, part C is asking for the amount of over or under applied overhead for the year. And so for this, obviously you first need to figure out, well, what are the actual overhead costs? And giving you these various items, factory insurance, indirect labor, factory maintenance, rent on the building, and depreciation of equipment. And notice, since they're renting the building, there's no associated depreciation on the building. But anyway, these are the 5 or so items that constitute the actual overhead cost. And again, you can see them listed on page 821 and clearly see that direct materials used and direct labor costs incurred are not a part of overhead. So you add these 5 items together and you get a total actual overhead cost of 22 million. So the question is asking for the amount of over or under applied overhead. Well, you need to then compute how much overhead would be applied in the circumstances. And here you need the overhead rate that was computed in B above, but you also need the actual direct labor cost on which it was applied. So you're no longer using the estimated direct labor, you're only using that to compute the applied overhead rate going in. When you're actually applying the overhead, you're applying it to the actual direct labor cost. So you're taking the 120% in this case times the 21 million of actual direct labor cost, and that gives you 25,200,000, which is greater than the actual overhead of 22 million by 3.2 million. So that is the amount of overhead that is over applied, because again, the applied amount based on the established rate times the base, the actual amount of the base, in this case the direct labor cost, gave you a figure that was greater than the actual overhead costs incurred. All right. Now, they also want you to determine the cost of goods manufactured and the cost of goods sold for the company for the year, and that any under or overapplied overhead should be included in the cost of goods sold. Well, the solution is shown on page 822, so I'm not going to reiterate it here except to say that in reviewing it, you should be able to see that there is an adjustment in Part D under 2 where they're talking about computing the cost of goods sold, and they start with the finished goods inventory on January 1st. They add the cost of goods manufactured, which was computed above. They add those two together, have a cost of goods available for sale, subtract the finished goods ending inventory at 12/31, and get the cost of goods sold before the adjustment for the over-applied overhead. And since it was over-applied, that means that basically we're overstating cost of goods sold by that 3.2 million if we leave it in there. So the adjustment here for the over-applied overhead is to subtract that amount from the unadjusted cost of goods sold to get the adjusted cost of goods sold of 76 million. So there you have it for the chapter 15 part of the review.